I love home movies. If you're not familiar with this show, it's a cult classic animated sitcom that originally aired in the late 90s and early 2000s, first on UPN, but then Adult Swim picked it up shortly after, making it one of the oldest Adult Swim properties. After Dr. Katz, it's one of the pioneers of conversational dialogue in cartoons. Like, if you close your eyes, it sounds like a radio show or podcast, and it was super fresh for its time. Created by Brendan Small and Lauren Bouchard, the show follows an 8-year-old aspiring filmmaker named Brendan Small, along with his friends Melissa and Jason, as they create amateur movies and navigate the chaos of childhood. But we're actually not here to talk about Brendan today, because there's one character that stands out and has arguably become even more iconic than the main protagonist, and that character is Coach Jon McGuirk.
I get the cow, I go in there, I'm a little drunk, and I say, give me that cow head from that cheese, I love that cheese. Now I have a cheese cow on my arm, Brendan. Don't get a tattoo. That's what I'm telling you.
Folks, this video is actually brought to you by a few things in the Johnnyverse. If you're interested, I have a brand new channel called Johnny 2 Casual, where you get to see my face a lot more often, a lot more face cam, and it's more news, off-the-cuff reaction type of stuff to stuff in the animation geek media world. We've been talking about the King of the Hill revival and Raphael Bob Waxberg's new show, Long Story Short, over there, among other things. I'm trying to get to daily videos over there if you're interested. I also want to thank everyone for your ongoing support for Johnny 2 Cozy, my compilation channel. That's been a huge success. I really appreciate it. And as always, thanks to my patrons, where you can see some of my videos early, as well as get exclusive audio commentaries for a lot of the shows I cover. Right now, we are moving into BoJack Season 3 on that journey, so check it out if you're interested. Thanks so much. Voiced by Jon Benjamin in one of his earliest breakout roles, Mcgherk is the undisputed fan favorite. He's the source of some of the show's most memorable quotes, unfiltered rants, and painfully uncomfortable advice. He's loud, lazy, often drunk, and usually wrong, but that's exactly what makes him so entertaining. At his core, Mcgherk is a walking red flag. He's selfish, dishonest, and constantly trying to cheat the system. He is a spectacularly unethical train wreck with a surprising amount of depth and tragedy beneath all of the jokes.
I'm coaching elementary school soccer. Think this is a joy for me? No, it's not.
His name is Coach McGuirk, so naturally we should talk about him as a coach first, or more specifically, how he demonstrates not to be one. From the very beginning, it's clear that Coach McGuirk is terrible at his job. He spends more time yelling at his players and mocking them than actually teaching them anything. He's even seen throwing soccer balls at the kids more than once. One time it's to get revenge on one of the kids for peeing in his water bottle. Yes, really? And the other time, it's really just because he feels like it. And that's not even the worst he's done.
I was in a fight last week.
Really? How'd it go?
I won.
Really?
Yeah.
Who'd you fight?
That kid David.
The forward?
Yeah, he cannot fight.
When he's not being physically brutal, he's just impressively bad at raising the kids' spirits and takes zero responsibility 100% of the time.
All right, now as you know, we lost yesterday. Now we all lost because of you, not because of me and the way I coach. That's my pep talk.
His outlook on the team's chances of winning are very bleak, which we come to learn is an attitude he's held for much of his own life. Mcgherk acts like he's intentionally being a bad coach to toughen them up and give them life lessons, but really, it's just projection. He's disillusioned, bitter, and taking it out on a bunch of 8-year-olds. As we'll see later on, it's also a way for him to make excuses for and to cope with how his own life turned out. There are multiple times when he doesn't even show up to coach. He'll leave the kids standing out in the pouring rain with no explanation, or just wander off mid-practice and let them fend for themselves.
How many of you showed up yesterday and waited around for me in the pouring rain? Gesundheit. All right, so pretty much everybody. Good.
When he does show up, he's usually asking the kids for favors, taking their lunch money, or just straight up taking bribes for them to get better grades.
Nobody's getting an A because we suck. So let's start with the bidding. Who'll give me $5 for a B+?
He's extremely neglectful as someone who's supposed to be supervising a bunch of kids. He doesn't seem to know who some of the parents are, or even all of the kids on his team.
Get up, Diane!
That's not Diane.
What's her name?
That's Cindy.
Sorry. Cindy! Get up! We have a Diane on our team, right, Brendan?
While the kids are objectively bad at soccer, Mcgherk does a really horrible job at building morale. The moment a halfway competent assistant coach steps in, the team actually starts winning. He's a lot more positive than Mcgherk, and that seems to motivate the kids. When it's just Mcgherk, though, he's screaming at them or insulting them. Brendan and Melissa literally sit on the grass and have a conversation in the middle of a real game. They do not really care when Mcgherk is in charge. Mcgherk often laments the fact that he's a soccer coach. In fact, he reveals that he doesn't even know how to play the game, implying he almost certainly got the gig by lying. Despite constantly complaining about the job, Mcgherk clings to it out of financial desperation. He makes it abundantly clear that he is broke, which is probably why he mooches off his own 8-year-old soccer players for cash so often.
Look, I'll get the gas, but that's it. Look, I'll get the soda, but that's it. Look, I'll get the bagels, but that's it. Look, I'll get the pants, but that's it. Hey, what is 15% of $39.50?
He does try his hand in multiple different career paths and hobbies, but whenever he tries something new, he fails almost immediately. He assumes each job will be easy, but he never puts in the work to actually get good at whatever he's attempting. And this tracks based on the advice he gives Brendan.
Anything too hard in life is not worth doing. Remember that. My point is, Brendan, if you're not immediately good at something, why do it?
He takes up lifeguarding because he thinks he'll get rich quick, which is motivated by reading a story in the newspaper about a lifeguard who saved a rich kid from drowning, earning a big reward. So he assumes that all he needs to do is become a lifeguard and save a rich drowning kid. Turns out he's a horrible swimmer and disgusted by the idea of giving mouth to mouth. He fails the oral, written, and physical tests. Another time he tries bartending, and to his credit, the teacher at the bartending school is really terrible. So he tries to teach himself. He ends up using mustard in one of his drinks. By the time he's completed his self-training, the best he can whip up is a beer. He tries to be a handyman, and yeah, it goes about as well as you'd expect at this point. Every scheme he tries ends in the same place: disappointment and self-pity. And instead of doing something about feeling unfulfilled in his career and sticking to the hard work required to change his own life, he screams at a bunch of children instead.
Melissa, you idiot! Kick the ball! Janine, would you prefer I get in my car and drive you up and down the field?
At the end of the day, Mcgherk's hatred for coaching soccer isn't really about the kids or the sport at all. It's ultimately about himself. Coaching just reminds him of how unfulfilled and aimless his life has really become.
You know what sucks worse than you?
What?
Nothing!
Per day, I would say I hate far more than I feel like I like something.
The show does not shy away from making this painfully clear. He's broke, lonely, and deeply unsatisfied in pretty much every aspect of his existence. This feeling is exemplified by this uplifting piece of advice to Brendan.
First of all, life sucks, all right?
Yeah.
Period.
Uh-huh.
Done deal. You got it?
Got it.
There's your lesson.
Okay.
Go enjoy it.
I mean, that pretty much sums up his worldview. Financially, he's in constant crisis and has ranted multiple times about how much he hates his apartment.
White-collar prison is better than where I live. That's one of the saddest things I've ever heard.
One of the few things he's seen to actually enjoy is camping, probably because it's the only time he gets to escape his depressing apartment. He even camps out at his office at school on occasion, but Mcgherk's self-loathing doesn't just come from his life being mediocre and unfulfilling, it comes from an overwhelming amount of unrealized potential. Throughout the series, we get glimpses of a younger Mcgherk who, surprisingly, actually had a lot going for him. He reveals that he went to school for architecture, although falling in line with his tendency to give up on things, he was only in college for a few days. He's also been seen to be an incredibly talented dancer on multiple occasions. It's arguably one of the most sincere and wholesome parts of Mcgherk's character. In high school, he was known as the King of Disco, even being given the nickname John Travolta Mcgherk in his yearbook. I mean, just look at this guy. He seemed genuinely happy on the dance floor. He also competed in Scottish Highland dancing, coached by his father, but that came with a lot of pressure. After losing to a rival who went on to become world famous, Mcgherk soured on Scottish Highland dancing, and to this day he struggles with the regret of that loss. But his passion for dance never really left him. In fact, he once joined a gang called the Feel Goods, which wasn't violent at all. They were just really into interpretive dance, which is an amazing concept for a gang. Total side note, but we actually see that this therapist character was a part of the same gang. He has the jacket on his coat rack. It doesn't add anything to the story, but it's a fun callback. In one of Adult Swim's bumpers, Mcgherk even admits that he would love to do Broadway.
I don't know, I guess I wouldn't mind being on Broadway. You know, like a backup dancer or...
And then there's his passion for golf. He had a real talent, but he couldn't control his temper. He wound up choking out an opponent because of this single outburst and never made it to the state finals. That same anger nearly got him fired from his coaching job, and while he learned to fake self-control just enough to survive, it's clear that he's always one bad decision away from blowing up his own life, even more than he already has. What ties this all together is how Mcgherk justifies being a loser, and he even projects this onto Brendan.
See, when you win,
Yeah.
you get cocky.
Uh-huh.
And you get lazy,
Yeah.
and you get flabby. And the next thing you know, you're losers again.
But we lose all the time.
Yeah, but it's gonna hurt worse if you win, because then you'll have tasted victory. You see what I mean?
As stated earlier, it's clear that this mindset is just a coping mechanism, a way to make sense of all the missed opportunities and burned bridges in his own life, and a justification for why the soccer team keeps on losing. Like he's playing it off as though he's a bad coach on purpose to teach the kids a lesson. He's convinced himself that had he not been so successful in high school, he wouldn't hate his life so much today. He tells Brendan that losing keeps him sharp, hungry, and thirsty, and to be honest, there is a nugget of truth to this. Failure and loss can teach us more valuable lessons than success at times, and the idea of peaking in high school is a trope for a reason, but the way Mcgherk frames it is clouded in self-gaslighting and pessimism. Mcgherk also worked as a roadie for a local band when he was younger, granted, not really a roadie in the traditional sense given that they never actually traveled anywhere, but still it was something he once genuinely enjoyed doing. It's a reminder that there was a time when Mcgherk wasn't just coasting through life bitterly, he was actually chasing something, multiple somethings in fact, and he was good at what he did. But as always, he found ways to sabotage himself. A big part of that self-sabotage is his drinking. He had his first taste of alcohol at age 3, which was his father's gin. It's clear that alcohol has played a major role in derailing his life, and though it's often played for jokes in home movies, it's actually kind of a tragic tale. Mcgherk has been arrested multiple times due to his excessive drinking, which is a recurring problem that keeps him from holding down any new job.
I'm sorry, but you've got quite a history here. All these fines and arrests and drunken disorderly.
Oh.
Learning all of this about him, it sheds quite a bit of light on why he is the way he is. He had so much going for him, but wound up in a place in life that he never really wanted to be. He's caught in a cycle of almost making the right choices, albeit for the wrong reasons most of the time, and just never being able to stick the landing. It's like he's in a prison, if you will.
We all live in our own prisons, Brendan.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all trapped in these bodies.
Yeah.
You have to go to school, that's prison.
It's a prison.
I have to be a soccer coach.
It's a prison.
Mcgherk projects his insecurities and pessimism onto most people in his life, especially the kids he coaches, but there is, of course, one who he projects onto the most.
When you get older, this is going to disturb you.
One of the most interesting and maybe concerning aspects of Coach Mcgherk is how much he serves as a glimpse into Brendan's possible future. He's not just a goofy supporting character, he's what happens when creativity, ambition, and ego all go completely unchecked and unsupported. When we first see these two interact on the show, they're a bit at odds. Brendan just can't stand Mcgherk as a soccer coach, and he finds out he's going on a date with his mom. Brendan is not very cool about this, and we see the two arguing about it before the date.
Swear to God, I'm going to come down harder on you on Monday. It's going to be like a friggin' hurricane.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to take you.
Hello, hey,
how are you? I was
Mom,
just
how you
talking to Brendan,
doing?
having a nice
Yeah,
conversation.
But despite being at odds at first glance, Brendan and Mcgherk share a surprising number of traits and parallel each other a number of times in the show. They're both creative, they both have this overblown sense of confidence, and they both clearly want to be seen and validated by the world. They also both self-sabotage themselves on a regular basis. But where Brendan is still a kid with potential, Mcgherk is what that potential looks like when it burns out. It's no coincidence that Mcgherk ends up stepping into this sort of father figure role throughout the show, although he's not exactly the best role model.
You start the cycle and then you don't stop.
Isn't it, like, totally unhealthy?
So?
Mcgherk is somewhat of a warning sign, and he practically shouts this in Brendan's face. But because Brendan is only 8 years old, he takes a lot of what Mcgherk says at face value. And Mcgherk, for his part, never really tries to steer Brendan away from the same mistakes he made. In fact, he encourages them. Terrible mentor to Brendan is basically Mcgherk's most central role in the show.
No such thing as psychology. It's all made up crap.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're all con men. All of them. Even the women.
Oh.
Just remember that when they're telling you how screwed up you are.
Mcgherk's advice ranges from wildly irresponsible to downright nihilistic. As we talked about before, he tells Brendan to never try something if he's not instantly good at it. He discourages practice and effort altogether, probably because he associates effort with disappointment and failure. As a result, he teaches Brendan to lie and cheat on more than one occasion.
Cheating is
Right.
just another way of being prepared.
Okay.
Basically, memorizing something is cheating.
Right.
You knew the answer before the test was given.
Right.
He wants him to cheat in school, and he wants him to cheat at soccer, as Mcgherk so often does. I mean, he literally takes some of the air out of the soccer balls before games to get an upper hand. He reframes dishonesty as a form of intelligence and a way to get ahead in the world, which obviously has not worked out for Mcgherk so far, but Brendan listens because Mcgherk is loud, confident, and most importantly, an adult who actually pays attention to him. Plus, again, Brendan is 8 and doesn't want to do any hard work anyways. Even with dating advice, he advocates for being as dishonest as possible, lest any potential partners learn about the real him.
What if they figure out that you're a liar, you know?
What, women?
Sure.
Then who needs them? Lie to men. Why do we play this crazy game that we play?
See, I don't know.
You know, why do we open ourselves up to make ourselves vulnerable to women?
This philosophy Mcgherk expresses is a major part of his character that we'll dive into more in a little bit, and it's just one of many instances of how Mcgherk doesn't want to face anything uncomfortable head on. Twice in the show, Mcgherk encourages Brendan to run away from home. The first time, Mcgherk clocks Brendan's plan and he eggs him on, saying it's a good idea and that he's done it himself when he was his age. He thinks it'll build character. The second time, Brendan confesses his plan to run away, and Mcgherk just straight up says it's a good idea. It's a real reflection of how deeply Mcgherk believes in escapism over growth, that if things get tough, the answer isn't to face them, it's to disappear and run away from your problems. The fact that it happens twice is also a subtle touch that we see with a lot of the characters in this show, but especially with Mcgherk. The writers are very good at keeping these tiny character traits consistent throughout the series, and unless you're binging it all in one go, you might not even notice it. I really appreciate that sort of attention to detail. Mcgherk isn't just some distant philosophical influence on Brendan. Their lives literally parallel each other. There's an episode where they're both caught lying to impress a woman, and another where they both feel threatened by someone coming in and doing their own job better than them. Mcgherk with the aforementioned assistant coach, and Brendan when his friend Dwayne starts directing a movie that Jason and Melissa both like better than the films they usually create. Both Brendan and Mcgherk have this inflated sense of their own brilliance without putting in the work to back it up. That egotism is part of what makes Mcgherk such a disaster, and it's something you can already see flickering in Brendan too, especially as a budding film director. Mcgherk often masks his feelings of failure and inadequacy with borderline Machiavellian levels of confidence. He talks himself up all the time, even though he has nothing in his life to back it up. Deep down, he's actually afraid of being seen, but he does his best to cover it up with hyper-masculine bravado. Brendan, similarly, believes he's a great film director and destined for greatness, but yeah, his movies are pretty clearly terrible. Funny in the context of the show, but horribly made in universe.
I suppose you're right. Fate is a cruel snake with bitter herbs and spices.
Yes.
Obviously, Brendan being a bad filmmaker is a lot more understandable given that he's still such a young kid, but the difference, the really important difference, is that Brendan still has people looking out for him at his age. He's got his mom, Paula, who keeps him fairly grounded while still remaining supportive of his aspirations, plus he still has plenty of time to learn what real growth and accountability look like. Mcgherk, on the other hand, is kind of a finished product. Not that he has to be, but he chooses to be. He knows he's messed up. He's just built his whole life around pretending that he's fine with that. In the spirit of projecting that sense of failure, he tries to lower Brendan's own expectations for life, pretty much assuming that Brendan will more or less be destined for mediocrity and self-sabotage just like he is.
You're 8.
You're right.
Why put yourself through this? You have an entire life to be miserable.
It's hilarious, but in a dark, sad kind of way. Like, you can tell Mcgherk legitimately believes this is a good thing to teach an elementary school student, as if he's educating Brendan on some inherent truth of life here. It's not as though he's preparing Brendan for the struggles we all face at one point or another. He's just straight up getting it in Brendan's mind that life has basically no joy to offer once you hit a certain age. Mcgherk also encourages Brendan to defy authority. When Brendan explains that he got yelled at by Mr. Lynch, Mcgherk just tells Brendan to yell back at him. Mcgherk, given his criminal history and desire to take shortcuts, often butts heads with authority figures himself. He wants to help Brendan get away with as much as he possibly can in life.
There's nothing wrong with lying to women.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. Or the government.
Right.
Or your parents.
Sure.
Or God.
Right.
All right?
While questioning authority is not inherently a terrible thought on paper, this advice ignores any nuance or potential consequence for such a philosophy. You know, like getting arrested multiple times for being drunk and disorderly. It's ironic because Mcgherk is totally cool with Brendan defying authority as long as it's not his authority that's being defied.
Brendan! Come here.
What?
Get in there for Jeremy.
I don't want to go.
Brendan, get in there.
I don't want to go.
Jeremy, you're out! Brendan, you're in.
Okay. All right.
All of these factors culminate in such a powerful dynamic for these two. It's funny on the surface, this absurd washed-up soccer coach giving hilariously bad life advice to an 8-year-old filmmaker. But underneath, it's about what happens when you don't take the steps to become who you could be. Mcgherk is Brendan's shadow, the version of him that could exist in 30 years if no one ever steps in to help or if Brendan doesn't take responsibility for his actions before it's too late. Brendan might be headed down a similar path, but he's not there yet, and that thread of hope, however small, no pun intended, is part of what gives home movies its quiet emotional weight beneath all the dry humor and chaotic antics. And if we're honest, Mcgherk isn't always all bad.
Good practice today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good coaching.
While Mcgherk exhibits many negative qualities and projects them onto Brendan, he also has some good qualities and is shown to really care about Brendan deep down. Though they're mostly at odds in the beginning, they soften on each other as time goes on. Mcgherk's motto is often, "What's in it for me?" And that holds true with Brendan the majority of the time as well, but there are instances where he helps Brendan for no personal benefit. As much as Mcgherk might be a cautionary tale for Brendan, he's also, strangely enough, one of the most consistent adult presences in his life. He may be irresponsible, abrasive, and emotionally stunted, but when you strip all that away, there's something unmistakably paternal about how he treats Brendan. Even if he's not always good at it, Mcgherk steps into the role of a surrogate father figure almost by accident and kinda ends up sticking around. We of course see it in small ways. He gives Brendan and the gang a ride home, even though he grumbles about it the whole time and makes it explicitly clear he doesn't want to do it. We see he gets way too into Brendan's little kid rock band, despite the music itself being atrocious. There is a moment in The Party where he sticks it to Fenton for being a brat at his own birthday. Fenton complains that Brendan ruined the party with his movie that, to be fair, was definitely making fun of him, but it was a semi-earnest attempt at trying not to make fun of him. Either way, Fenton actually did have it coming because he was whining and complaining throughout the entire party. Mcgherk lays down the law, and it's probably one of the only times he yells at a kid who actually deserved it, and he's sticking up for Brendan while doing so.
Fenton, shut up! All right, shut up! And you stop your weaselly little crying! Now apologize to your mother and then apologize to everyone else here at the party.
He even helped him study for history class by giving him a bunch of misinformation and wild conspiracy theories, but it's the thought that counts, right? As the series goes on, their bond only gets stronger. They become more comfortable with each other, more honest. Mcgherk helps Brendan with golf, though in classic Mcgherk fashion, his big tip is to cheat or level the playing field, and of course, put on as big a show as possible.
Yeah, Bagger McGurk's the name. Golfing's my game.
Reed, this is my son's soccer coach. I don't know what he's...
Soccer coach.
Yeah.
Bagger McGurk.
Oh, Bagger Mcgherk. There are certain moments where that care for Brendan actually breaks through the sarcasm and apathy. Mcgherk's surprisingly adamant that Brendan stay away from drugs. It comes up more than once, and it's one of the few times he actually shows some real concern for Brendan's future with advice that isn't misguided. You get the sense that he's seen the damage alcohol has done in his own life, and he doesn't want Brendan to end up the same way, even if he doesn't quite know how to say it outright.
No, I know. You're doing drugs, right?
Are you out of your mind,
Answer
Coach?
the question, Brendan. Are you doing drugs? What the hell is going on with you people? What are you on, drugs?
No.
No.
Huh? With all the nicknames?
No.
What are those, drug nicknames?
That's the thing here. Mcgherk's advice is, 9 times out of 10, completely terrible, but the intent behind it is surprisingly sincere, usually. He tries to give Brendan life lessons, even if those lessons are filtered through his own warped, bitter worldview. He attempts to teach him how to date, how to fight, how to deal with heavy stuff like having an absent father.
They program us to think one way, milk cereal.
Right.
Then you realize orange juice cereal is fine. It all goes in the same place. You know the old saying.
Yeah, I know that saying.
Point is, Brendan, give your father a chance.
Sometimes in his ridiculous metaphors, there actually can be nuggets of genuine wisdom. Speaking of Brendan's father, there's some real jealousy in that realm. Brendan's dad is absent through all of season 1 and doesn't appear until season 2. It's a big part of Brendan's struggles as he's mostly just raised by his mom, which we'll hopefully cover more in a future Brendan-centric video. That said, when Brendan's dad starts making an effort to be part of his life again, Mcgherk kinda hates it. Not openly, of course, but in that weird, petty, passive-aggressive way he processes all of his emotions. Brendan and his dad start a pizza club tradition together, because they like pizza, and you can tell Mcgherk is instantly butthurt about it.
Pizza club.
So you're saying that I don't belong in your club?
I guess.
You have a private club that excludes people.
He's so salty that he tries to copy their ideas by forming his own pizza club with Walter and Perry, 2 kids he really has no real connection to other than the fact that they're on the soccer team. Mcgherk is really acting like a kid trying to prove he's not left out here. When he purposely bumps into them at the pizza place, you can tell he's doing everything he can to get into the club. And Brendan is visibly uncomfortable. You could argue that it's because he's embarrassed, but it seems more like he feels guilty that Mcgherk is left out. I think Brendan, on some level, knows Mcgherk is like a father figure at this point, and that maintaining this role is important to Mcgherk. Eventually, Brendan and his father do invite him into the pizza club, and you can see it genuinely means something to him. And you don't need to take my word on the whole Mcgherk father figure thing.
See, I'm like a father figure to you.
You really are.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go out front and whoop at girls.
He gets a little bit uncomfortable after this moment of sincerity and instantly deflects to sexualizing women so as not to sit in the feeling of closeness too long, but it's clear he really meant what he said, and Brendan agreed with him on some level. There's another scene when Mcgherk is trying to study to be a lifeguard at the library, and Brendan is trying to study as well. He's delirious because he continually hit his head in the pool, but we get a small yet sweet line from him here.
Hey,
What?
buddy,
What?
this was our first book club meeting.
Man, he really wants his own club with Brendan, like he has with his dad. Again, it's kind of a joke, but I think it shows his true colors and the bond he feels with Brendan. In the very last episode of the show, Mcgherk tries to build a grill for Paula and calls it our grill. He's not just making dumb quips. He's trying to wedge himself into this makeshift family, even if his relationship with Paula is strictly platonic. Not because he has to, but because he feels this is really the only family he has. Mcgherk's relationship with Brendan is messy, dysfunctional, and often inappropriate, but it's also one of the most emotionally honest parts of the show. Mcgherk doesn't say it outright, but everything he does, from the horrible advice to the subtle jealousy to the quiet moments of genuine care, tells us the things that he won't say out loud. He sees Brendan as someone worth showing up for, and in a life full of disappointments and broken connections, that might be the most meaningful thing Mcgherk ever does. Mcgherk never ends up having a family of his own. That's one of the quiet tragedies of his character. And while there's an early episode with a babysitter who looks suspiciously like him and is even listed as Coach Mcgherk's daughter on the wiki, it was in all likelihood a scrapped idea from the writers or something. In the actual canon of home movies, Mcgherk doesn't have a kid, and this is confirmed multiple times. And the reason why is pretty clear. Nobody's ever stuck around long enough for that to happen.
All the smart, pretty girls, move away from crappy two-bit towns like this.
Coach's love life is a recurring focal point in home movies, and even partially how we're introduced to him in episode 1. Mcgherk talks a big game when it comes to women, but if there's one theme in his romantic life, it's that he absolutely, consistently cannot back it up. Just like all the other stuff he talks a big game about. He's awkward, uncomfortable, and always just a little bit sad. Remember that date he went on with Paula? Yeah, it was a total disaster. He shows up in his usual soccer coach outfit with a jacket tossed over it, like he actually thinks this is an appropriate fit. His card gets declined, and then he just never calls Paula again. When he finally does, she gently shuts him down in the funniest way possible.
What if we just ran into each other? Like we don't plan it.
You mean like I just bump into you randomly or arbitrarily, right?
Yeah.
So not a date, but if I happen to see you, we would chat or...
Exactly.
It's kind of amazing that this is basically our introduction to this guy. After he gets rejected, he tries to play it off like he has some code about not dating his students' moms, but that doesn't stop him from making a move on Rebecca's mom. We don't really know who Rebecca is, and it's clear that while he's not good at keeping track of the parents of his soccer team, he is at the very least good at keeping track of the moms. In the episode School Nurse, he tries his luck with the school nurse, Nurse Jen. Again, he shows up looking like he just walked off the soccer field, but this time he gets completely wasted and spends the entire date trauma dumping his life story.
You want it clean? You clean it! Clean it yourself! Clean it yourself! And I have not seen my mother since that point.
Obviously, she does not like this. She still gives him a pity ride home, and he still tries to get her to come inside. He appreciates that she doesn't talk too much. Yikes. Again, she declines, obviously. There's also that weird moment at Fenton's birthday party where Mcgherk actually disciplines Fenton, and Fenton's mom is kinda into it. It's heavily implied they go on a date or something afterwards, but it never comes up again. Like most things in Mcgherk's love life, it probably fizzled out off screen. Though, Fenton's mom being turned on by Mcgherk's authority in this one is very funny. A real insult to injury moment for Fenton. Then there's the dating video. Yes, Mcgherk enlists Brendan and Melissa, two 8-year-olds, to help him make a dating video and a personal ad, respectively. He needs to ask Melissa how to spell sophisticated. This is real. He's that desperate. By episode 206, he's giving Brendan his own advice about women, and naturally, he tells him to lie.
All right, you meet her somewhere.
Sure.
But oh no.
Yeah.
I forgot the tickets. They must be back at my place.
Right.
Right? You following?
Yes.
He even admits to as much when talking to Melissa.
I mean, I have to boil down my whole personality in one huge lie.
That fear comes up again when he tries to reconnect with a woman from his past, Allison, the girl he took to the high school Halloween dance. And again, he hits a wall. She's married now with 2 kids. It's another painful reminder that Mcgherk's life never moved forward. He's stuck trying to recapture something that's long gone. Still, he keeps trying. He cold calls another old classmate, Lorraine, and lies through his teeth, says he's in shape, runs a successful tech startup, competes in bodybuilding. When he drives to the date and sees her in person, he panics. But instead of ghosting or spiraling, he does something rare. He's honest. Not in a performative woe is me way. He tells her who he really is, how he really feels. It's one of his more human moments in the entire series, and he even buys real opera tickets.
I was embarrassed about who I was, and I'm still embarrassed. You know, I'm not gonna lie anymore. I want you to know who I am, you know, who the guy standing in front of you is. I'm a soccer coach for kids.
And yeah, so she just gets in a cab and leaves. It's a great mirror to Brendan's subplot in the same episode. Brendan lies and gets rejected. Mcgherk tells the truth and also gets rejected. It's like the universe confirming what Mcgherk's always feared, that no matter what version of himself he presents, he's still not good enough. And that probably reinforces why he leans so hard into dishonesty. I mean, it's understandable she left given how dramatically he lied in the first place, but I don't know. I almost feel bad for him. The moment where she got into that cab definitely felt like it reinforced his toxic beliefs. At one point, he drags the other more prominent teacher character, Mr. Lynch, into a double date scheme with, yes, the nurse again, the same nurse he already bombed with, and another colleague from the school. It's really not even a double date. It's a group co-worker hangout that he's trying to turn into something romantic or sexual. And yes, it goes exactly how you'd expect. He lies, gets misogynistic, and tries to one-up Lynch the entire time. Lynch, on the other hand, just being himself, does pretty well until he gives into Mcgherk's taunting. Either way, it's yet another romantic implosion. But his most significant romantic connection in the show is with Stephanie, Paula's friend. When they first meet, things seem to go surprisingly well for once. Mcgherk is flirty, confident, even charming in his weird pseudo-aggressive way. They ditch the wedding they were attending and go to Stephanie's hotel, and he doesn't exactly lay down the charm.
I think this cowboy's gonna get going. Thank you for having me here, though, and tell your parents I said hi. Congratulations on the retirement. I know it can be a tough transition. Bye.
It isn't explicitly stated why he just bailed all of a sudden, but Stephanie is clearly flabbergasted. After all that heavy flirting and confidence, he gets cold feet for some weird reason. Well, they reconnect later in the series, and this time they actually almost sleep together. Mcgherk is totally getting into it, but he ends up having a heart attack. Like, this poor guy just cannot comprehend that this is actually happening. It's a surprising, revealing turn for his character that we'll get more into later. Though it's never spelled out in black and white, the implication seems to be that he's not just terrified of emotional vulnerability, but also physical intimacy, of being seen, of being touched. The bravado is just armor.
It is time for a man hug.
No, I'm not man hugging.
Men, join me.
I don't even hug women.
We learn more about him outside of the show itself, too. In an Adult Swim bumper, it's revealed that Mcgherk is awake for 22 hours a day and spends 11 of them watching porn. We also see he has a sex doll in his apartment. Seems like he's got a full-blown porn addiction and major sleep issues, which ties to his insomnia episode. But this unhealthy addiction might be a piece of the puzzle when it comes to his deep-seated intimacy issues. The guy is a mess, but it all comes from somewhere, and that somewhere is probably his mother.
Pal, I had a tough childhood, I'll tell you that. You know?
Mcgherk has a terrible relationship with pretty much every member of his family, but he holds the most resentment towards his mother by far, which is a big cause for his issues surrounding dating.
My ideal woman is my mother, actually, who I hate. My mother can't stand me. I can't stand my mother, and that relationship has been reliving itself through other women for my whole life.
He says himself, point blank, that he can't stand his mother, and that relationship has caused a cycle of pain for him well into adulthood. He admits to Nurse Jen that he hasn't seen his mother in years due to major falling out. We never see Mcgherk's mother in person, but she is in the season 2 premiere. Mcgherk tries stand-up comedy and bombs. Yes, add that to his list of failed ventures. Turns out she's in the audience, booing and heckling him. Though, again, we never actually see her. It's a moment that happens during the end credits.
Man, you suck.
Yeah, thanks, Mom. And my mother, ladies and gentlemen. I remember my first drink too, lady. So anyway, folks.
Yeah, I remember your first drink too. You were 3 and you drank your father's gin.
Oh my God, it really is my mom.
This brief, faceless reappearance here underscores how her disapproval still haunts him even in absence. There's a repression around women and identity that seems to manifest in other ways as well, particularly in his enjoyment of cross-dressing. On 2 separate occasions during Halloween, he's dressed as a woman, one in the yearbook photo and another in present day. We even see him dressed as a woman in an Adult Swim bumper, and he calls it freeing. There's no shame in it, just relief. This emotional release contrasts sharply with his self-imposed ideas of what masculinity should be. He views vulnerability as weakness. When thirsty, he insists he's not thirsty. He's simply dehydrated. He even refuses to get glasses until the second to last episode of the entire series because, as he puts it, glasses are for dorks, despite having severe vision issues. I mean, look at how blurry his eyesight is. This is apparently what he sees throughout almost the entire series. Mcgherk thinks masculinity means white-knuckling through life. life, pretending not to be in pain. So it's interesting that dressing as a woman is seen as freeing for him, as though he feels like he can't fully express himself until he cross-dresses. And his relationship with his father is honestly no better than his mother. Obviously, we know he was given gin at the age of 3 by his dad, and it's clear his father was an aggressive drinker as well. Mcgherk even does an impression of him, and it's very telling.
Every time an angel rings a bell, he gets his wings. All right? Now pour me another brandy. That's my dad.
His father also pushed him to perform, forcing him into Scottish dancing as a child. This pressure and dysfunctions seem inherited, generational. When he talks to Brendan about his own father, it's not just personal failure he's warning against, but the cycle of inherited masculine damage. Mcgherk wasn't kidding when he said he ran away. He left home at 8 years old and didn't return for 5.5 years. During that time, he found work at a pizza place and was taken in by a new Greek family, temporarily finding the structure and care he lacked in his real home. He even said that this Greek family practically raised him. This period of pseudo-adoption says a lot about what he needed and never got. Other family members show up or get mentioned only briefly, if at all. There's Uncle Pedro, who died before Mcgherk ever met him, but had apparently considered leaving him a business in his will. The oddness of this detail, that a man he never met thought to include him in his legacy, speaks volumes about the loneliness and isolation that runs through the entire family, not just Mcgherk. He had a grandfather at one point, but alludes to the fact that he may have accidentally murdered him via a prank when he was younger.
Did you push the call button or do the bed thing where, it goes up and down?
He's in pretty bad shape. We didn't impair his health.
Oh.
No.
That's how my grandfather died.
When Paula asks him who to contact before his eye surgery, he pauses and says, I have an uncle, unable to even name someone off the top of his head. It's unclear whether he's referring to Pedro, who would be dead by this point, or another uncle altogether. But the point is made clear that Mcgherk has no real lifelines. He does mention a sister when she's supposed to come visit. In preparation, Mcgherk tries to get one of the soccer moms to pretend to be his fiancé, hoping to impress his sister or prove something to her. The fact that we never hear about the sister again and never actually meet her is fitting. Like so many figures in Mcgherk's life, she's more of a ghost than a presence. Someone he feels he needs to impress and prove his worth to, not someone to connect with on a deeper level. Despite all this dysfunction, there are brief, poignant moments where Mcgherk shows more capacity for care outside of Brendan and crew. He looks after a sick kid named Eddie and refers to him as the son I never had or don't know about. He says he's just a new kid at school, but Mcgherk feels extra responsible for him.
Eddie's sick, but he's a good kid. Anyway, anyone messing with Eddie messes with me. You got that, Melissa?
Their time together is short, but meaningful to Mcgherk. Eddie eventually moves off to Arizona, and it inspires Mcgherk to consider becoming a big brother, hoping to find a way to give the kind of mentorship and affection he never received. He said it was nice to spend time with a kid one-on-one so they could really bond, unlike dealing with a bunch of kids on the soccer field. This Big Brother program does not go super well, though.
You're lame.
Hey, good. You know what? Go. See if I care.
Adios.
All right. I'm going to the agency tomorrow anyway and getting a better little brother.
When that opportunity falls through, he requests a new little brother, specifically one who's sick. There's something about vulnerability that draws him in, especially in children. He even refers to Brendan as weak and sickly, further suggesting that Mcgherk, despite himself, sees Brendan as a kind of surrogate son, and that his soft spot for him may be caused in part by his soft spot for weak, sick, small children. This aspect of his character is further emphasized when he grows a fondness for Brendan's adopted baby sister, Josie, in the episode Storm Warning. Then there's Mr. Freckles, an old, slow dog that Mcgherk makes Brendan walk and clean up after. We never find out who the dog actually belongs to, and he only shows up in the episode Business and Pleasure. It's another vague connection, another unclear relationship, and another example of Mcgherk caring for something he won't admit he cares about. And what do you know, Mr. Freckles appears rather old and sickly. In the end, Mcgherk doesn't really have a family, at least not one that functions. He has ghosts, trauma, and a few flickers of potential connection, most of which fizzle out before they can become real. The only people he comes close to letting in are outsiders, particularly children and women he barely knows, which says everything about his broken sense of belonging. This is made all the more clear in his quote-unquote friendships throughout the series.
And friends steal things for their friends.
Mcgherk doesn't really have friends in the traditional sense. Certainly not for a 38-year-old man. Most of his relationships are transactional and built around convenience or personal gain, but not always. Sometimes he just wants someone to talk to. Sometimes he's just straight up lonely. Take Mr. Lynch, for example. Soft-spoken, a little awkward, but almost in a charming way. Lynch and Mcgherk's relationship starts off like a classic bully versus nerd dynamic. Although, as we find out, Mcgherk is clearly threatened by Lynch, especially when it comes to Nurse Jen and how seamlessly he appears to attract women at times, even while being a bit of a dork. He admits to his face that he doesn't like Lynch and goes so far as to steal his checks regularly.
I sign it this name on top.
Okay. Mr. Lynch?
Yes, Mr. Lynch. He gives me his checks sometimes. We share.
But despite the antagonism, Mcgherk eventually invites Lynch on a trip to Cancun, although this is only because he wanted a group discount, but still, he asks Lynch, a man he quote-unquote hates. Though he does also ask Brendan, a literal child. That says a lot. It's pretty clear that Mcgherk doesn't have many people in his life if he's asking someone that he cannot stand. Later, Mcgherk hangs out with Lynch again, this time under the pretense of that casual co-worker hangout I mentioned before. It does not go well, but by the end, Mcgherk and Lynch actually bond a little over their shared strikeout. A similar pattern emerges in his interactions with Eric, Melissa's dad, who's a real estate agent. Mcgherk claims he's looking to buy a house, but it quickly becomes clear he's mostly using it as an excuse to tag along and avoid being alone in his apartment.
But that was fun when we were looking for houses together.
Yes, it was.
Well, I'll see you around. I know where you live.
Sure. The next time you want to try to buy a house again, let me know.
Okay, how about next week?
Sounds like fun.
He even crashes at Eric's place and starts trying to parent Melissa. He asks Eric to hang out a few more times throughout the series, always straddling the line between desperate and sincere.
So Eric, let's do something after you drop the kids off. You want to go out?
I'm doing something. I'm going to my journal writing class.
Oh, blow it off. We'll go to the track.
In Four's company, Mcgherk runs into Paula, Eric, and Lynch at the grocery store and insists they all have dinner together. He's excited about the idea, seeing it as a potential friend group forming, but no one else shares this enthusiasm. Every single one of them tries to dodge the invite, despite Mcgherk being relentless. Eric eventually agrees to go, and even admits afterwards that he enjoyed himself, only for Mcgherk to stick him with the bill.
I'll check you later, buddy. I'm gonna leave you with the check.
It's classic Mcgherk, part genuine connection, part selfish motivation, which is fascinating because there are times where he really just seems lonely and desires friendship with people, and other times where it appears that way at first, but it turns out he's going back to his age-old adage, what's in it for me? There's a similarly sad comedy to how he invites Ken Adelberg, the local meat guy, to share a sausage that his Uncle Pedro left him in his will. Yes, Uncle Pedro left him with a sausage. Apparently a damn good sausage, but just a sausage and nothing else. Mcgherk doesn't really know Ken. In fact, he was only trying to sell him the sausage earlier. It's the same thing with his mechanic, who he refers to as a close friend despite their relationship being entirely transactional. He claims an online pen pal and a bar regular are his best friends, but the bar guy barely talks to him. He truly needs to reach in order to come up with people he considers real friends. In Everyone's Entitled to My Opinion, he joins a cult focused on men sharing their feelings. They're called the Cry Walkers, but he only joins them for free booze and to do some camping. Eventually, Mcgherk gets lost in the woods and totally spirals while avoiding talking to the group about his feelings.
Okay, Mcgherk. People are probably looking for you. They have to be. You do have friends, don't you?
It's clear that he's trying to convince himself more than anything. He wants to believe he matters to someone, that anyone would notice if he disappeared. What makes it more bittersweet is that Mcgherk seems to have had good friends back in high school. Yeah, it's always high school with this guy. In the yearbook, he mentions Aya, Damon, Davio, Pops, Big Guy, Hoffman, Katie, Jamie, Big Bree. We never learn anything about these characters outside of this brief mention, so it's unclear if these people were real friendships or just nostalgic projections. Given how often he projects friendships onto people like his mechanic or a guy selling meat, it really could go either way. Mcgherk is a lonely man full of regret, clinging to fragments of social connection wherever he can find them. But by the end of the series, something starts to shift. Slowly and almost imperceptibly, his relationships begin to change. Granted, not dramatically, but enough to suggest that real friendship might actually be possible for him.
I'm gonna be a better person, and I'm gonna help kids more.
Coach Mcgherk's biggest moments of transition come from nearly dying. Yes, this happens to him more than one time. The first is when he has that heart attack right in the middle of almost hooking up with Stephanie. It's played for laughs mostly, but it does rattle him quite a bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, this tape is a prescription for a better life, a richer life. I'm gonna be a better person.
For a brief moment, this close brush with death gives him an existential wake-up call. He decides he wants to be better, to actually learn how to coach, to try helping kids for real, even to pursue his long-forgotten dream of becoming a pilot like John Travolta, which is another nod to his high school nickname, John Travolta Mcgherk. Of course, like most things in his life, he never follows through with becoming a pilot from what we see, but the impulse is there. For once, he wants to do more than just drift aimlessly. His other major brush with death comes when he gets wrapped up in that Cry Walker stalker's cult. They try to get him to open up emotionally, but McGuirk panics and bolts. Ultimately, it ends with him almost drowning. Clearly, he still hasn't bothered to learn how to swim, until Melissa faces her fears and saves his life. Shaken and tearful, he breaks down in front of her, Brendan, Jason, and Paula. In classic McGuirk fashion, it's messy and weird, but it is real. For a moment, he's fully vulnerable around others, and he rushes back off into the woods, a freer man. After that, something shifts. Again, it's not incredibly overt, it's a subtle shift. He doesn't suddenly become a saint by any means, but he noticeably softens. He starts spending more time with Brendan and the gang, genuinely helping them and standing up for them when it counts. His rough edges are still there, but some of the venom is worn off.
Just watch it again, one more time. Watch it again.
Watch it again. One more time. Watch it again, or I'll break your back.
There are more hints of growth. In one episode, when Brendan visits him to ask for help, we see him quietly working on a Zen garden. It's never mentioned in any major way, never framed as a big deal, but it does kind of say a lot. He's trying, however clumsily, to deal with his anger and find some peace. It's a far cry from the man who once didn't even want to go to anger management. At another point, he's giving Brendan a ride somewhere, and instead of rushing through the errand, he stays parked so he can talk. He opens up about his childhood, his pain, things he rarely shares with anybody, his struggles with Scottish Highland dancing as a kid.
You know, I don't mean to rush you or anything, but my grandfather's really waiting.
I was a Scottish Highland dancer, Brendan.
The sentimentality doesn't last too long, since he eventually kicks Brendan out of the car because he gets too uncomfortable. But it's a rare glimpse into the man he could be if he let his guard down more often. It's a start. At one point, Melissa has McGuirk sign Brendan's get well card while he's in the hospital and signs it Love Coach McGuirk. It's a slip. He immediately tries to scratch it out with Loan Coach McGuirk, but then he does it again by accident.
Yes, going to bartending school. So, when you get old enough, come by my bar, buddy. Love. Oh, damn it.
In the series finale, during the final scene in the entire show, McGuirk is behind the wheel of the car with Paula in the passenger seat and the kids in the back.
What does everybody want to eat?
Pizza?
What about
Someplace with a salad
Brendan,
bar.
you like
One of those like all you
Italian
can
is
eat
definitely-
salad
All
bars.
right, shut up. Sorry I asked.
It's a quiet moment, but him asking the kids what they want to eat is pretty profound here. There's no quip, no backhanded insult, no selfish ulterior motive for doing so, just a simple, selfless gesture. He's thinking about someone other than himself and shows that he really does love these kids in his own McGuirky way. What's so cool about McGuirk's transformation is that it's never announced as some grand redemption arc or significant personality change. The show doesn't make a spectacle of it at all. It's built into small, fleeting moments. The Zen garden, the signed card, the parked car, even in the final scene, the changes are there if you're paying attention. He's still McGuirk, but he's changed, just a little.
Are you gonna quit soccer?
Eventually. That make you sad?
A little bit.
Coach McGuirk is the undisputed fan favorite of home movies, and for good reason. He's a disaster of a man, lonely, broke, and generally incompetent, but that's part of what makes him so relatable. Most people have felt lost, stuck, or just not very good at life at some point. McGuirk is that feeling exaggerated to absurdity, and that's why I think he resonates. But what really makes McGuirk unforgettable is his brutal honesty. His one-liners and bizarre wisdom are some of the funniest and most unexpectedly sharp moments in adult animation.
Now, let me tell you a little bit something about women.
What's that?
Women are they're like men. But I'll tell you something, men are not like women.
He has this way of dropping completely unfiltered truths about relationships, adulthood, and failure that hit harder because they're hidden inside nonsense. His delivery, thanks to Jon Benjamin, makes it even better. That signature deadpan voice turns even his most insane thoughts into instant comedy.
Hey, Coach, do you think I'm stupid?
Of course you're stupid, Brendan.
He's written as comic relief, sure, but there's a real sadness beneath the comedy. McGuirk is clearly a man in pain. He drinks too much, lies constantly, and starts unnecessary fights. He's selfish, reckless, and immature. He's a broken man, but he's not extremely malicious. He's just lost. In the real world, he'd probably be the guy you ghost after one hangout, but in the cartoon world of home movies, he's endearing because he's trying in his own warped way to be better. He still gives it his is all most of the time. He shows up for Brendan more than Brendan's own dad ever does. He's not always helpful, and it's definitely not healthy, but the positive intent is there. Underneath all the dysfunction, there's a decent guy inside somewhere. He's the kind of man who stumbles through life, screws up constantly, but still manages to say something strangely profound about it all, sometimes by accident. And when it really counts, he does show up, maybe not perfectly, maybe not gracefully, but he protects the people he cares about in the way only he knows how to do. That might be what makes him so lovable in the end. With all that said, I'll leave you with words of wisdom from the man himself.
I got that tattooed on my chest. I'm an idiot because I was drunk one night.
Wow.
Don't live like me.
Folks, thanks for tuning into this home movies video. This was written by Michael Williams. Make sure to check out his channel, Go Play Hero, for more great content. And he's also helping me produce my Johnny Too Casual channel, so make sure to check that out and tune in for more home movies videos soon. Peace.
I stay mellow watching Johnny Two Cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny Two Cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.